Hey guys, welcome to my 2020 wrap-up. So before we jump right into it, I just want to go over briefly how I'm going to structure my wrap-ups for the future. So basically, what I'm going to do is state the name of the book, the rating I gave it, and if I have any qualifiers there, I'll include them. And for my quarterly and annual wrap-ups, I'm going to talk about my Goodreads goal. I know not everybody participates in this or takes it seriously, and that's totally cool. If you don't set reading goals, that's fine. I still do. So at the beginning of the year, I pledged to read 75 books, and as of today, which is December 23rd, I have read 96. I'm still in progress on 2. I may get them done before the end of the year. I have about a week and a half. I'm pretty sure I can finish Addie LaRue and In a Holidays. I have like 3 hours left on the audiobook. So, yep, I may get to 98 by the end of the year, but that's gonna be it. Now, a weird thing with my Goodreads challenge is I've read 96 books, but most of them at the beginning of the year were graphic novels. The way that I quantify them on my list is I don't count single issue comics, so I have to read like the trade paperbacks, so usually 5 or 6 issues, and then I count it as a book read. With manga, I just count 1 paperback manga as a book read. So that's how I do it with the graphic novels and stuff. It just didn't seem fair to count like a single issue that's, what, 15 pages maybe, as a book. If you do it differently, that's fine. That's just how I do it. I felt like I was cheating if I counted single issue comics. Okay, so at the beginning of the year, I read mostly graphic novels. Usually that's how I do things in the winter, because that's when I catch up on a lot of my comic book reading. So I have 7 to Eternity Volume 3 by Rick Remender, and I gave this a 5 out of 5 star rating. And I have Middle West Book 1 by Scotty Young, and I also gave this 5 out of 5 stars. Middle West Book 2, 5 out of 5 stars. And then I have Deadly Class Volume 7. I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. The reason for this is that I have progressively become less and less invested in Deadly Class. I'm still reading it. It's still interesting enough to keep reading it, but I feel like it is dragging on a little bit, and I feel a little disconnected from the story at this point. I have Deadly Class Volume 8, which I also gave 4 out of 5 stars. I have Die Volume 1, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars. And then I reread Noragami mangas 1 through 22, and I gave them all 5 out of 5 stars. I love it. I'll reread it again, probably. Maybe not this upcoming year, but sometime in the near future I'm probably going to reread all of them again. The Promised Neverland number 10, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I read A Court of Wings and Ruin right at the beginning of the year, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. It's just a guilty pleasure for me. And then I read Greta Thunberg's book, No One Is Too Small to Make a Difference. I rated it 2 out of 5 stars. Not for the message, but just for the fact that when I bought it, I did not realize it was the same speech that she gave over and over again. So instead of it being like, it literally had chapters, and each one was the same speech, just slightly reworded, because it is actually copies of the speeches she gave. So that's kind of my fault, but I was just like, why did this have to be published? So it had nothing to do with the message. It had everything to do with, I didn't anticipate that I was going to be rereading the same speech essentially over and over again, and it was very repetitive. So, and then I read His Majesty's Dragon by Naomi Novik, and I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. I loved the first book. The second, not so much. And then I read The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. This was difficult for me to get immersed in when I first started reading it because of the first person writing. But aside from that, the story is really good, and I'm excited to read the next book in the series. I just haven't gotten around to it, so. And then I read The Last Wish. Is this the first book? I don't know. This is one of the books in the Witcher series. It's one of the short story collections. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I read it after I watched the Netflix original and still really enjoyed it, which is a big testament to the book, I think. Or the Netflix original, honestly, because it's pretty accurate, but it was really fun to read after I watched it. And normally I don't like to read the book version after I've already seen the adaptation. And then I read No One Left to Fight by Aubrey Stitterson. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Honestly, I read this graphic novel collection simply because of the art. It's pretty cool. It's really like bright and graphic, and the story is very much like Dragon Ball Z inspired. So it was fun. And then I read Black Science number 9. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Naturally. I read East of West Volume 10, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Oh, East of West Volume 9 as well, 4 out of 5 stars. I read The Sword of Destiny, the next book in the Witcher series. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I read Critical Role Vox Machina number 1, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars, and I still have to read the second one. And then I read Harleen number 1 and 2, and I gave them both 5 out of 5 stars. I restarted and finished The Way of Kings, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I read Harleen number 3, gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I read The Queen of Blood by Sarah Beth Durst, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I read Unearthed number 1, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I read my first nonfiction of the year was Tom Brown's Guide to Healing the Earth. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. My rating for this was a bit complicated. Did I write a review? Yeah, I gave it overall a 3.5, mostly because I felt like it had a lot of filler and it could have been condensed and shortened quite a bit, and I feel like they really just like filled it with repetitive messages and repetitive little like mottos and quotes in order to make it book length, which was frustrating, but I did like the overall message of the book. And then I read Reaver number 1, and I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read my best book of the year, which was House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas, and I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. It made me cry at the end. I read Isola number 2, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I read Paper Girls number 6, gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I read Seven to Eternity Volume 4, gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I read Die Volume 2, 5 out of 5 stars. Middle West Book 3, 5 out of 5 stars. Unnatural number 3, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Deadly Class Volume 9, 4 out of 5 stars. The Wicked and the Divine number 9, 5 out of 5 stars. The Reluctant Queen, which is the sequel to The Queen of Blood by Sarah Beth Durst, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I read Curse Words number 1, gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I read Every Hearted Doorway by Seanan McGuire, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. No. I read City of Bones by Cassandra Clare and gave it 1 out of 5 stars. Don't even get me started. One of my coworkers at the time insisted that I at least give it a shot, even though I was pretty sure I was gonna hate it, just because maybe I don't know. I didn't read it when it came out, when I was like the appropriate age to read it and like it. So I knew as an adult I would hate it because it would be so cringy and just so terrible. So anyways, I read it to appease my coworker and I hated it. I hated every minute of it. Then I read Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I read The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren, gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo, 4 out of 5 stars. Curse Words Volume 2, 4 out of 5 stars. Shades of Magic Volumes 1 and 2. This is not the books, but the comics. I read both of them, 1 and 2, and Gave them both 4 out of 5 stars. Ruin and Rising by Lee Bardugo, 3 out of 5 stars. Wasn't happy with the ending, is what it comes down to. The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman, 5 out of 5 stars. Wicca, A Modern Guide to Witchcraft by Harmony Nice, 3 out of 5 stars. Good reference material. Mistborn, The Final Empire, this is the first book in this series, by Brandon Sanderson, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Sparrowhawk by Delilah S. Dawson, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren, 5 out of 5 stars. A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula Le Guin, 4 out of 5 stars. Please See Us by Caitlin Mullen, 2 out of 5 stars. Twice in a Blue Moon by Christina Lauren, 3 out of 5 stars. Say You Still Love Me by K.A. Tucker, 3 out of 5 stars. Foundry Side by Robert Jackson Bennett, 5 out of 5 stars. The Thief by Megan Wallen Turner, 3 out of 5 stars, and I have DNF'd the series at this point. The Word for World is Forest by Ursula Le Guin, 4 out of 5 stars. Could have been 5 out of 5. I'm on the fence. It's either 5 out of 5 or 4.5 because the only reason I rated it 4 was because of how much I hated the protagonist. But you're supposed to hate him, right? So, but he was really awful. No Longer Human by Junji Ito. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It was okay, not my favorite by him. Primer by Jennifer Muro. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. 4 out of 5 stars. Very cute superhero graphic novel for kids. I actually really liked it. And then I read Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And then I read Throne of Jade by Naomi Novik. And as I said earlier, I really loved, I gave the first book a 5 out of 5. The second book, Throne of Jade, I gave a 2 out of 5. I don't know. Give me more dragons and less politics, because I'm over it. And I DNF'd the series after this. I know. There's like 10 books in the series, and I'm like, if it's gonna keep going this way, I just don't care. And then I read An Ember in the Ashes by Saba Tahir, and I gave it 3 out of 5. It was okay. A little tropey. It was fine. And then I read Shadow of the Fox by Julie Kagawa. Gave it 3 out of 5 stars. Then I read Moon Called by Patricia Briggs. Gave it 4 out of 5 stars. So then I read My Life Among the Underdogs by Tia Torres. This was the second and I think the final nonfiction read I did this year. And I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Truly loved it. It's made it into my permanent collection. And then I read Ali Broche's new book / comic, and that is Solutions and Other Problems. This book was delayed for a while, and then when it came out I was really excited, but ultimately I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. It was just okay. It was definitely a lot heavier in the topics it talked about than the first book, but there are also some parts that were truly hilarious in the second book. If you liked your first one, I do recommend you read it. Yeah, I don't know. The first one just really, like, I think when I read it, I was going through a lot of the things that it was discussing, so it really stuck with me more. And while this one was really good still, it just didn't hit me the same way the first one did. And then I read Shorefall by Robert Jackson Bennett, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And then I read The Honey Don't List by Christina Lauren, and I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. Wasn't my favorite, but it was fine. I read Middle Game by Shannon McGuire. I read this, how far did I get? Yeah, so I DNF'd this book around 40%. Usually if I've read, you know, that much of a book, I do count it as read. If I feel like I got enough out of it to give it an actual rating, then I count it as read. So I DNF'd it around 40%. Honestly, I'm gonna move my rating down to a 1-star review. It was truly an unpleasant experience for me, to say the least. I know a lot of people loved Middle Game. I just didn't. I thought the themes were very similar to the author's other books, which was kind of annoying. And I did not like the characters. I found them very juvenile. I don't want to get into a whole rant about it. I didn't like the book at all. It was the worst book I've read this year, and I was very disappointed because so many people had raved about this book. But I digress. I hated it. If you loved it, that's fine. And then I read Well Met by Jen DeLuca, and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. It would have been a 4, but the slow burniness of the romance was a little annoying. I just wish it would have picked up a little quicker. I did really like the characters though, so there's that. Then I read The Beginning Place by Ursula Le Guin and gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. The main reason being, this book, the plot almost didn't feel like it had a true climax in the plot. It just kind of meandered along like a slight pace the whole time. I did find the premise, the setting, and the characters to be pretty interesting, but the ending was very mediocre, came up very quick. The climax itself was kind of lackluster and not really that exciting to me, so ultimately it got a 3 out of 5 stars. And then I read The Black Prism, and this is the last book on my list here. The Black Prism by Brent Weeks. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I am going to continue this series. I know some people have problems with the writer. I know some people have a problem with some of the characters in this book. But overall, despite those very obvious issues, I did like the book, and I did like some of the characters, so I'm gonna keep reading it. I own the second one, so it'll probably get read next year at this point. Anyways, guys, those are my books that I read this year. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more book-related content. Thank you for watching. I hope you guys have a good holiday and a good end of the year. I'll see you in 2021. Bye!